Anyway, this is a PowerPoint. This is based, not based, but sort of starting from the what I did in at the International IPM Symposium earlier this year in San Diego. And I think maybe a few of you were attending that, maybe didn't attend this session. So hopefully this won't be too much of a repeat for folks. But I did add a lot of stuff, and I went through this a few times and made some, of course, changes. But I also thought of some things that I'd want to point out. So anyway, this is what I'm going to talk about: the challenges in Oregon that we've faced here, the process that I developed to develop this program, and then some of the outcomes and impacts of the program's work, and then lessons learned, and then some tips that might be useful for school districts as well as people that are in similar spots that I am that are trying to be doing education outreach on a state level. Okay, so the challenges for Oregon are we are in the bottom 25th percentile of funding for maintenance and operation schools, and there's a 25% turnover of designated school IPM coordinators and maintenance staff. And I'd say designated school IPM coordinators, all 197 school districts are required in the state are required to have an IPM an IPM plan and an IPM plan coordinators as per state law. Um, Anyway, and then there's a low awareness level, and I think this is sort of, as many of us know, sort of universal around the country, a low awareness level from the general public, the legislature, other entities of the health risks to pests that are in schools, and then also what IPM actually is, and then the costs and the benefits. Just a quick mention in Oregon, I said 197 schools. I don't have this in anywhere in the PowerPoint, but I want to make sure that not just let people know if you're kind of comparing what I do here, what I have done with your state or your area. There's about 100 and 1,200 and 200 plus schools, and then I already mentioned 197 school districts throughout the state. Anyway, the last one is there's just a lack of boots on the ground doing and helping and educating with IPM implementation in schools. And this leads to less than ideal monitoring and evaluation. Especially in my case, I have not been able to do some thorough monitoring that I'd like to do to see how we're moving along and what how we could shift and change things. And that kind of can lead to lower quality training and then lower impacts. So my sort of ultimate goal is to a sustainable and continual improvement of pest management at Oregon schools, and sort of behind that. And if you go to our website, what I say the goal is there is to protect the health and safety of children and staff at schools. And so this is sort of realized by an integrative extension system that I've developed or have developed or am still attempting to develop. This is maybe the ideal. Don't have all of this yet, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in future slides here coming up. But a synergistic network, sort of a network that is kind of entities, groups, organizations that are all tied to or connected with or interested in what's going on in schools, and just connecting with them in a certain way that there's a benefit to everybody that's in the network, all these organizations and departments of state departments and such that might not otherwise have benefited from this networking that's related to school IPM. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Anyway, increased peer sharing of successes, expertise, and supported and facilitated by the OSU School IPM program. And when I talk about peer sharing, I'm talking about the IPM coordinators at schools or school districts. And then continued collaboration and cooperation and training of those in the stakeholder network. So risk managers and facility managers at school districts, of course, but also, and this is an example, I put e.g. there's health inspectors, but there's others that I've trained or that have trained me as well in the state. And then continued needs-based, on-site, hands-on annual school IPM coordinator training. That's a cornerstone of this program, and everything else feeds into this at the moment. Supportive materials developed for local, quote unquote, local Oregon school IPM implementers. So another way of looking at this is sort of the components and process. And a lot of times when I think of process, I think of, well, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And I did start out, and I have started out in other programs and other work that I've had in other parts of the world and other parts of the country, like this kind of, but here almost more than other places that I've worked with other topics or things that I worked with in school IPM. I've done a lot of bouncing around along these bullets here as far as when I do it. So at the beginning, I did start learning from other organizations, schools and school systems, different schools, how things work at the schools, getting understanding of people's needs, not just related to pest management, but the oftentimes the greater needs like fire, flooding, freezing of pipes, indoor air quality, and then looking at how what I'm doing and what I have to offer can link with or sync with what they do. And then other programs from around the country that are similar to the school IPM program I have here. And then building a network of associations, federations, and departments here within Oregon. And then there was an Oregon school IPM law that I had a part of contributing to that I was asked by then Representative Bonamici. She's a senator now, but at that time she was working sort of the point person for the legislature to develop or create what became a bill and then became law, the what I call the IPM in schools law or the Oregon School IPM law. And then training, I've already talked about that, but it's always I try to have as much of the experiential and hands-on as possible, and then also sort of a feedback loop where I learn and we learn. I learn as I'm going on in any given year. I have certain topics, but I'll also even between training, sometimes I'll see something at one training that I can use at the other one. Um, and then that feeds back into other training and other interactions I have. And then creating and adapting model IPM plans for use in schools. I've created, I think, three now training guides that are used within the school district. Pest presses, which others have that I don't know who invented that. I'm sure there's people on the in the webinar here that know that are logged on. I think it might have been. I know my exposure to them came from University of Arizona and Mark Lame and Don Gouge, but those are like fact sheets that are created for like teachers and custodial staff, really short, just to get people aware of certain pests that they might have in their school. And then there are some materials, even including on our website, that were created by school districts, which I really like to see those kinds of things. That's kind of my ultimate goal. I don't know what I've said, what I've said before, but part of the ultimate goal, I should say, is getting that more. I guess I did say about the peer-to-peer thing, but getting individual school districts are working in collaboration with each other to develop practices and materials that are useful for them as well as their friends at other districts, other school districts. Low impact pesticide list, that's part of the law. I'm not going to talk too much about pesticides in this presentation, but that is has been a big driver and concern that I think even throughout the country that motivates laws related to pest management in school. And then sustaining and expanding. So I'm at a point, and I've been at this point for a while, a few years now, is where, I want to sustain where we're at now, but I'm also trying to expand that and keep the network going, the interactions that I have with various entities in the network, and then always looking for more resources. Okay, so just a sampling of what an annual IPM coordinator year looks like. This is all these red dots are the places I've trained in this year, except for with the exception of one. My final training of the year will be in December in Marion County. And anyway, so typically there's 11 full day events. They're always at a school. It takes about a year to plan for them. I start planning for the training. The first training I give of the year usually is in March, and at that time, people that are there, I build up sort of uh, relationships with so many people that I know even before I go to the training who I want to ask to be a host for next year. We set up the day before the training at the school. I do a walkthrough at the school, and then we conduct the full day the next day. Anyway, always includes the IPM site inspection and assessment. That's usually in the afternoon. The host IPM coordinator always co-trains, and that's usually that last part of the in the afternoon. I always line up and try to line up hosts that are experienced, that have attended training at least two or three times, and have sort of a track record and of doing IPM as far as I'm aware of and understand the limited amount of time I have with people and discussions and such. Um, just looking at my notes here, at this point, we typically train over 95% of Oregon's 197 school district IPM coordinators every year, and usually most of the community colleges as well, and then several private K through 12 schools and Head Start programs. So it's not just school districts, although that's my main focus. Um, and that 95% reaches about over 500,000 children. I mean, representing 500,000 children and 1,000 schools, because most of those that are not able to attend are from smaller districts. Just a quick side note, this year, for the first year ever in 2025, we have 100% of the school districts have registered. We've already had some no-shows. It's usually people get sick or retire or quit or whatever. Anyway, this is I think it's 130, 131 training events since 2011. So we've been at this for a while, and that's like 4,900 plus people have attended. Okay, so I've I added this slide because I would just want to sort of emphasize why we do in person instead of online. I've got, over the last few years, there's been sort of people have come to me and said, why don't we do it this way? Not so much school districts and schools get maybe two people per year out of, hundreds that register that mention something about going online. Often it's people that have never attended before. But anyway, the reason why we do in-person training instead of online is the majority of participants prefer in-person because of the networking time they have with each other, a time to discuss problems and solutions, group activities that we do, and the hands-on high IPM inspections and assessments that we make up a large part of the afternoon. And I just want one thing just to mention when I talk about networking, I encourage people to talk about and network about things that are not related to pest management, like during lunch or even breaks or whenever, because a lot of times that comes back to IPM, even if they don't think it does necessarily. So just maybe one example, polished concrete floor. I consider that a part of IPM because if you're using polished concrete floor, it's a lot more easier to maintain than it is other flooring. And so it doesn't directly affect pest management and pest prevention, but it's more efficient than other types of flooring. So people have more time to do other things like sanitation in other parts of the school. And then our experience and research show it's more effective at building and retention of knowledge and skills as hands-on type training. And it really is a lot more fun to, at least for most of us, I think, to get out there and get dirty and look around, snoop around in parts of the building. So I just want to mention a little bit about the network here. Up there in the top, it says, what's learn about, from, and with, WIIFT or whatever. It's blocking. My little strip up here is blocking. What's in it for them and what's in it for me. So I always try to think about where people are at and what would be in it for them when I have interaction with them, as well as what's in it for me. And I think what's in it for them is to try and see if there's anything related to pest management, environmental health, protecting health and safety of children that I can link into whatever it is that they're doing. And if nothing more, just that they're made aware of what I'm doing. So these are the organizations that I've interacted with. And in the interest of time, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but just wanted to mention that these three at the top have become the people or the entities that I work with more or collaborate with more, the Facilities Managers Association, the Oregon School Facilities Management Association. Um, that's where, they're the people that have been the most important at getting IPM done in schools. They're the people that are they're running the show, so to speak, as far as everything to do with schools. The OSU, Oregon State University Turf Management Program, and I connected in 2013. Alec Kovaleski from the Turf Management Program started helping out at all the trainings. So they give pest management training focusing on, of course, mowing, fertilization, and irrigation practices, but many other things too. And they do also do a hands-on portion in the afternoon. And then the Oregon Department of Agriculture, I know there's a lot of people or some people that have registered that are from state departments of agriculture. Um, but I know that in those states like Maine and I think it's Michigan, that the Department of Agriculture seems to be responsible for doing IPM training in schools, and then Extension maybe is supportive of that, or they network together. I know in Washington State, you'll see down below at the very bottom of this tier, Oregon Health Authority. That's our state Department of Health. I know in Washington State, there's the Washington State Department of Health is doing is a main player or whatever, if you will, that's pushing that forward. And along with WSU is there involved too, but it appears as though like as far as the legislature goes, or the legislation goes, it's more and more of the IPM is being put on, and historically also with or the Washington State Department of Health. Anyway, but here, getting back here in Oregon, sort of the second tier. Oh, and I was going to mention the Oregon Department of Agriculture. At first, they were involved, and then it kind of tapered off, and then maybe about 6 7 years ago they became more and more involved, and they're doing they're doing investigations and random inspections, kind of like what's done I think in Texas. And then they also have somebody training on mostly related to laws related to pesticides in schools, but they conduct the training with us every year as well. Business officers, superintendents, school boards, insurers. The insurers that's the PACE, Property and Casualty for Education. It's an insurance pool that I think all but two or three school districts are part of. They've been very supportive. Anyway, I'll just move on to the next thing. So this all is leading into sort of a simultaneous, continuous, overlapping, refreshing, synergistic, culture changing. I just use all these big words, or not big words, but these words that are kind of describing how I do things. Another way I think of it is just doing everything everywhere all at once, kind of a thing. Multitasking, I don't know if that's a good word for it, but I am continuing to learn from professionals, researchers, and school implementers, and still trying to maintain facilitative, supportive, synergistic networks, and developing, monitoring, and changing policy as needed. I've been asked to advise a little bit on changing the school IPM law in the past 10 years or so, but not as much as I would have liked. And I know there's other states. I think it was Matt Fry from New York. I heard somebody a few this is like 5 or 6 years ago that they were New York Cornell IPM program was meeting yearly, I think, with legislature and discussing how things are going and where there might be some funding for that. So that would be something that I would hope could happen here in Oregon, but not so much right now. But I have been, other than after I gave the initial contribution to the development of the law as it mostly stands today, then I've been advising just a little bit. And then just continuing to do that IPM training at schools and focusing on the decision-making process. Why is something here? What do you take into account when you're making a decision as to what to do next when you see a pest conducive condition or pests themselves? signs of pests. And then monitoring and evaluating on multiple scales. I've done, of course, survey. We do the evaluation of training after each training. But I also try to do surveys, and I'll show you a little bit about that in the end or in a few slides. And then facilitating, increasing peer-to-peer sharing and learning. I've already talked about that, but this is mostly at schools and the supportive resource materials. And then again, there's this 25% turnover. So when I'm doing the training, it's a repeating and a refreshing for some people, but a refreshing of the familiar topics, especially when we're talking about the principles of IPM and what's required by law. But for others, it's new. So I've had to try and have this sort of balance between new topics, new pests, and old topics that people have already seen, heard before two or three times. Okay, these are practices we strive to track and evaluate, and I put strive because I'll just show you the click on the next button there. You see the blue circle around the time and the money. Everything's related to time and money. So I've attempted to look at these things and monitor them as a way of showing the improvements to IPM. One of the early things that's not on here, and that's because early on I realized it was really difficult to track the funding that people have or the amount of money they spend on pest management because a lot of schools don't have a line item for pest management. They'll have a line item for something else or some things else, multiple things that pest management is a part of. And so it has been really hard for them and for me to work with folks to try and see how the costs have gone down over time. I will just mention something. I remember Tom Green talking with Tom about, I think he was some meeting we had, a group of us, and he was saying of all the publications that they've put out on IPM in schools, the one that was the most popular was the business case for IPM in schools. So it'd be nice if we or somebody could be sort of updating that and refreshing it. Um, anyway, getting back to this, trapping techniques for mice, of course, the turf management practices, use of pesticides, that was almost an afterthought. I'll just move into the next slide here. The surveys that I had in 2016, I had a survey about use of pesticides, and it was almost an afterthought because I had been thinking so much about the process and the reduction of pests and practices that people do, IPM practices, and I just thought, oh, I'll just add pesticides, and it turns out there was about a 60% reduction. I'm pretty sure that was 2016. It might have been 2017. And there's a Journal of Extension article that I wrote with Alec Kovaleski on that, the turf person I was mentioning. Anyway, looking at 2010 compared to 2013, there was a 90% response rate of school districts, and then it went down to an 80%. I think the reason it was 80% in 2013 was because I just didn't have the bandwidth to do promoting of the survey and calling and emailing folks asking them to please fill out the survey. But it was still a large response rate, and then things have gone on from there. So you can see probably some of you have read ahead while I've been talking slowly or fast. I'm not sure how fast I'm talking, but we are we have trained 100% of Oregon's school districts. I would say every 3 years, since we get about 95, like I was mentioning, 95% or so of people that attend, every 3 years, I've looked at it last 6 years, and it's pretty much 100% are trained within a 3-year period. Um, and again, that's because there's the turnover, people get sick, that kind of thing. Change practices, again, 100%. I'll show you the next slide, which I'm kind of, I guess, proud of for what we did in 2024. Use of non-chemical methods, that was something we did in the survey. And then I already mentioned about the reduced use of pesticides. So in 2024, we haven't done this for 2025 yet because we're not done. I've got an 11th training coming up in December, as I mentioned before, but we trained 488 people at 11 events that you j very similar locations to what you saw for the locate than the map for the 2025. Um, anyway, 387 of the 408 completed evaluations, and all but one learned at least one practice they intend to implement in school, and over 90% learned two or more practices. So I think that's the highest we've ever had. Okay, so lessons learned from this, whatever it's been, 17, 18 years of experience working with schools is an integrative extension approach is key to success, as I've described. And I'm talking about like a statewide program here. Also, sort of marketing and promotion of what IPM is and what we have done, or the schools are doing, or I should say, schools, individual schools, stories of individual school districts, private schools, and community colleges. And then also the large scale sustainable and continual improvement is possible where there's a confluence of supportive policy, minimal increases in funding for maintenance and operation of schools, and sustainable funding for extension. In my case, extension, the OSU School IPM program, which is doing this. Now, it kind of remains to be seen if the sustainable and continual improvement is going to happen here in Oregon, because when you look at the confluence of these three things, the supportive policy is there. That's the IPM law. But the other things are, and then also I could say that you would think, how should I say this? A law is passed, it's the school IPM law. People implement the law over time. You see, okay, there's some things that maybe should be changed about the law, and that I think is possible with our law. It's a pretty robust law, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. I should say there was a minimal change that's going to take place in the beginning of next year, but it'll be a slow, and I'm not sure. Again, remains to be seen how much of an impact that's going to have. And then, of course, in Oregon, I'm sure it's similar in many other places. Just even minimal increases, just even continuing service level, as we call it, to fund and maintain and operate schools is a big challenge. And then also those of us that are on, attempting to work with them that have some kind of funding to do training and provide materials and actually go and assess things at schools, that's another thing that's needed. And then that last point, insufficient boots on the ground to capitalize on the wealth of knowledge that's out there. There's people talk about translational research and we need to do this and we've done this and we're doing this and that, but it's not, I don't see that it's really translated all that much. I think they're just as I wrote here, there's insufficient boots on the ground to capitalize on that knowledge. And that is sort of an extension, training and education and working with and learning from others to do the training. That a training that's good. Okay, so I'll just get into the tips here. I see that on my little timer, I'm almost at half an hour. Um, okay, so tips. Getting started. I'm going to talk about getting started training and then helpful quotes, developing an IPM plan, and garnering support. Excuse me. So this again, I think this will be different for, this is some of the people online here are going to be saying, "Oh yeah, I've been there, done that," and but hopefully there'll be something for everyone here as far as little tips that I've created here. So getting started, if somebody was starting this and they were just from a small school district or even a large school district, but you didn't know where to start or whatever, I would say, start at just one school, maybe even just an elementary school. But the idea of starting slow and starting small, learning what's going on, and then actually making an impact, something that is a success early on. So again, if you're watching this and you're from a school district, you might be from maintenance or something and say, okay, I'm going to listen to myself here. You already know that part. You already know kind of what's going on, or a specific school or something. But then the other is if you focus on an easy pest or a key pest, and I say easy because it'd be easy to deal with, or a key pest that's something that's really important, like easy might be like odorous house ants or something. They're relatively easy. They can be relatively easy to deal with to greatly reduce and such. Or a key pest like the house mouse that can cause asthma triggers and vector diseases and things like that. But also focus on easy or key IPM practices, something that you can do in a relatively short period of time with a relatively low cost. It's going to greatly reduce or eliminate the pest in that building or that school. Okay, so training. Begin by conducting short, practical, usable, hands-on training. So I've already mentioned that when I was talking about slow, start small. Um, I had this luxury at the beginning, but I mean, luxury isn't maybe the way to say it, but when the law was passed, it said 6 hours of training is required. I filled in the gap. There was nobody doing it. I did it. And it's now full day and it wasn't short. It was usable. It was, I don't know if I'd call it practical, but over time it became better. I became better at it. More people started getting involved in it, and every year especially I think it's about the last 4 years, every year we have more people attending, more people that don't even are not even required to attend or want to attend to get credits. They're just attending because they want to, they see the value in it. Anyway, and then asking custodial staff. I mentioned this before, but the people where you're doing the pest control, if ideally you'd know a little bit about it before you did it, and then do a walkthrough the day before the training. And again, if you're at a school, you may not really need to do this, but if you're doing sort of a short, quick inspection, we do spend, I think it's like an hour, hour and a half doing inspections in the afternoon of our training. But if you're doing just a short, like 1 hour or 2 hour training, at a school and just one school and you're just focusing on, let's say, the kitchen and the pantry, then you can just, after you give a few PowerPoints or whatever, and I put that in the next bullet, you can just do a short inspection of one location, like a pantry as an example. And then it's good to have some fact sheets to reinforce the training to hand out to folks. And then also, ideally, you'd have, if again, this is starting slow, starting small, just the first few trainings you do, something that you can take quick action during, together with the people that you're training, or soon after to remediate the pest the pest conducive condition and or trap out the pests if it was rodents or something like that. So this is a picture I use. I use pictures like this when I'm doing the training in the PowerPoints. But and I ask, what do you see here? And then I tell them what some sort of a discussion and such. But I just thought I would show this. I mean, if you go into this pantry, again, a lot of people already know this, but I don't go into and I work with the hosts, the school district folks, not to just go in and say, hey, that we see this, and this, but to ask people, where what we're thinking about pest prevention here is a major part of IPM. So we're thinking about access to what, and then, somebody would say food, maybe they know already, food, water, shelter. Okay, so here we are. Look at this here. Where do you see access to food, water, and shelter? And then people would say, okay, I see that there's cardboard boxes with cereal in them or other things where they can get to the food. It's really easy to chew through. And then others might say, well, it's not store. It's nice. It's a nice thing stored with the wire rack shelving. And then you ask, well, do you see anything else? What about look up, look down? Where do pests hang out? Where do you see mice, for example? Are they flying through the air? No, they're crawling around. Another thing sometimes I like to say is, do look at drop ceilings. I think Bobby Corrigan said if you're doing IPM and you're not looking at IPM at drop ceilings, you're not really doing IPM, something like that. So anyway, all this kind of thing is just guiding people when you're doing the training instead of telling them, or you're sort of showing them, but you ask them the questions as well. And when I do the training, as I increase, I would talk about starting slow and starting small and all that. But the way I'm doing now is I always include the inspection and assessment, as I said, in the afternoon. Um, and this is just a few examples of people looking around. As I was putting this together, I realized that that picture on the left, he's got a really cheap little flashlight. It made for a good picture. It has a blue light shining up there. It's not really a blue light flashlight. It just turned out that way with a cheap camera. But good flashlights are always important, and I always try to emphasize that in trainings and show them mine and flashlights that other people have, as well as other tools. So the what we have done, we're not doing this so much now for various reasons, but this was a good start. I mean, I still am doing this. We still hand out inspection checklists. Usually it's just newer folks that use it, but it's also good even for experienced folks to look at. Often when I go into a kitchen and I'm doing training, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm looking at the time, I'm looking at what people are doing, and I'm sort of trying to manage the crowd as well as the time. And I forget to look at some of the really obvious things like drains or, like I just mentioned, ceilings, or where the food is coming from, when it's where did it come in, what the closest external door to the kitchen, things like that. So it's nice to have a little checklist. And especially if you're doing this early on, or with people that are not familiar with IPM or inspections, good to share with them an IPM inspection checklist. I have a couple on my website. I know that a lot of other entities, groups, organizations, extension, departments of ag maybe have checklists as well, inspection checklists. And then I wanted to point out in the middle, the middle photo, people are drawing out what they've seen, some things, and then on the right photo, they're presenting that back. Let me just go to the next slide. So you can see here this is something that the small groups go and they inspect, and then they report to other groups, and the showing first good things that they found as far as pest prevention, cleanliness, things like that, no holes, whatever they found, and then the issues they found, and then the recommendations. And then on the left of the photograph, you see what was done with a group just before them. So there's this discussion, and it can be very productive. Okay, I said that I would talk about helpful quotes. These things really help me, and I just want to share a few things. So, Mark Lame from Indiana University retired. He said, "Do what you're already doing. Just think pests." And that has really kind of stuck with me. That people are all really busy. When we do the IPM inspections, they learn about to see other things. And I'll just say the next two from Sherlock Holmes. I think the second one, I'm not completely sure that was a Sherlock or somebody paraphrasing Sherlock Holmes, but it's the idea of, observing things and seeing things that it says here others overlook, but that you yourself might have not been thinking about. And I think the only way to get to this point is to follow these three bullet point things, is to actually have time and experience actually inspecting and learning things as you're inspecting different places. And that's the benefit of the hands-on training and doing it at a different location every year. I'm talking about the way I do it now, at different schools every year. Another one, oh, I just want to give one example of the do it you're already doing, just think past, sort of a reverse one. I was training the insurance pool folks, just to show them how I do things. And I went into a storage room and I was instantly looking at all the clutter, and I was going to show them about the clutter and a few other things. I can't remember what it was. And before I could even think to talk, their eyes just focused straight on a fire extinguisher that had something blocking it. So they're thinking about fire, and I was thinking about pests. Another example, the student union here. I was walking around the student union at OSU with a woman who was just starting there as in pest control, but she'd been doing other things from she was assigned to the Memorial Union. And I was looking at the bushes and how close they were. I was looking for, we were on the outside of the perimeter. I was looking at moisture, things like that. And I walked right past a bicycle that was bolted or chained, locked to a stairway, then the guide rails of a stairway that's going up to the main entrance. Something you just don't do. And I didn't even see the bicycle. And that's what she thinks about, and that's what she was doing. But I mean that we all fall victim to or whatever. We all often think, see, and focus on things that get our attention that we're not too familiar with. So that's what I was just an example. And this is what I really like too, is we're always thinking about the pests and we're being reactionary a lot of times. And this Philip Smith, West Virginia Department of Agriculture, I think he's no longer there, but IPM shifts our minds from looking at pests as a problem and looks at pests as a symptom of the problem. And this goes with some of the core parts of IPM in schools, or the core element of IPM in schools. And I think a lot of IPM even in agriculture is preventing the pests. So another thing is developing an IPM plan. Again, if we're talking about just getting started, I wouldn't have developed the IPM plan just at the beginning. This was a requirement in Oregon that every school district in public and private K through 12 school and Head Start programs and so on had to have. So I developed the one IPM plan and then later realized it was too big and developed a smaller one, more to the point. And then years later, even something even shorter. And that's what I would really try to focus on, is having an IPM plan. Maybe the beginning of it would be just sort of a basic description of what IPM is. But I think in an IPM plan would have to have, somebody who is the point person. I would call them the IPM coordinator or coordinators and their responsibility. So somebody, if they have a problem with pests, they can go, there's a point person that is in charge of doing pests in the school, doing pest management in the school. And then staff education about preventing access to food, water, shelter, as well as, and I put that the last bullet there, short fact sheets on common pests that are in that school or that school district. And then also the IPM inspection checklists. They're pretty easy to get a hold of or create yourself. I think the other ones on my website are in Word, but I'm sure like I said, I'm sure there's a lot of others too that you can get and modify it to fit your own situation. And then pest reporting and action process. So even now, after all these years, we have people doing, I like to call it self-medication. They're doing something in their room, their office, their schoolroom, the kitchen, or whatever, and the IPM coordinator doesn't know about it. So there's somebody doing something that's really not going to help, and it's actually going to exacerbate the problem. And that's not happening. They're not reporting to the IPM coordinator. And so that's why I would think that should be a part of the IPM plan. Okay, so garnering support. I didn't know exactly how to use this. I've thought of this or how to phrase this or articulate this, but I used to think of like marketing, building, promoting, expanding, getting more of the broader community aware of the what IPM is and what the problems are, the concerns, and what the benefits of IPM are. And I think an emphasis on the health and safety of students and staff is probably the first thing we should be focusing on, and then talk about actually specific things like asthma, insect stings, disease vectors. And then I put pesticides last because pesticides is usually what's first talked about, and we really want to stop all these terrible pesticides. And then, yeah, we'll do something else like we'll use better pesticides or we'll do a few things. But really thinking about, pesticides are a result of a pest that's there. And if you can stop that pest from being there, you're not only going to stop the pesticides or greatly reduce pesticides, but you're also going to reduce the risks that come from many of the pests that we find in schools. And so the messaging to the school administration, the general public, the legislature, advocates, I'm sure there's other entities that you could think of needs to be tailored, or I would say again, focus on those things about health and safety, environmental health, and protection of children. And then communicating and educating in a variety of methods. My methods have been short fact sheets, and then just meeting with folks as best I can. It's been pretty stretched, pretty thin. I meet with and have communications with the school boards associations and the lobbyists for the school boards association and also for the superintendents association. But it's just not as much as I would like to have. And then promoting your successes is really good too. That's why I've said, have early success and then promote that to the above three, the above uh, people, administration, public, legislature, advocates. So here's just an example of I used to give I guess I still do, a slide, this slide or one like it at all my trainings. And I'm kind of now preaching to the choir, but again, this first there's 25% turnover, so that it still bears kind of repeating and showing people this. But this would be something I would think that would be useful to share with the wider people that are like school boards that are concerned about class size and things like that. They're also concerned about asthma. And I know this isn't current. I think this is maybe 3, 4 years old. So it may not be the number one cause right now. I don't think it's the number one cause of absenteeism in Oregon, asthma, that is. But there is a connection between pests like German cockroaches and the house mouse and absenteeism because of asthma triggers. And I don't have the research to show that, but there is research that show that, reduction. In fact, I think it was something that the group that Matt Fry belongs to, the Urban Rodent Management group or consortium. There was just a recent research that they did on, I forgot where it was, but basically they did some trapping and they showed that IPM actually for the house mouse reduce asthma triggers and the urinary proteins in a location that they did the research. This is I talk about, stuff that schools have created. I really like this letter when Bob Bennett, from the Ontario School District in Ontario, Oregon, that is, Eastern Oregon, created this to let people know. And I'll just wanted to highlight some of the letters. So he's explaining and promoting IPM without ever using it. And this is before I did, I never even thought that you could do that, but he was doing this, and I don't even think he was knowing that he was doing that. But anyway, he talked about there's a lot of ings here: improving, sealing, eliminating. So they're doing action things. And why are they doing it? They're doing it to create a healthier environment for children, for the children. This is a letter to parents. And even in the last part there, yellow highlighted text from the bottom there, he's already talking about the three things that pests need to survive and how they're eliminating those things. So something like this, and by the way, this is also in Word on our website, and I promote it a lot to, not internally, but to when in our trainings and such, that people could use this and grab it and modify it for their use in their schools. This is another thing too. I don't think I've been good enough, or I don't know about individual schools good enough to promote themselves. I think there's one school down Phoenix Talent that did something like this. So they have, this is sort of a, made up thing, but the Johnson School IPM team, and then protecting the health and safety of all of our students and staff, and then they say who it is. And they at Phoenix Talent here in Oregon, they used to have I think they still do, but it's sort of a newsletter, the facilities management group or division, excuse me, and they were promoting what they were doing, and not always, but often they would have things about pest management in there. So some final suggestions, sort of repeat, start slow, start small, start where the people at and build on what they know and listen and learn from them all along the way. It's really great to learn things from others. I've really enjoyed learning so much from all the school folks that I've worked with. And along with that, spend time with school facilities managers. If you're not a school facilities manager already, hopefully there's a state association of school maintenance or operations or facilities or similar. In Oregon, it's this Oregon School Facilities Management Association. In Washington, it's WAMOA. Forgot what that stands for already. And then depending on your situation, focus your messaging on these groups: legislature, public, the general public, advocacy groups, and health, like Department of Health, county health inspectors, that kind of thing, and then also school administration. And with that, I'll go to the next slide, which is my last one. And should I stop share, or no, I can leave it up and let you talk, Nikki? Or
You can leave it up so people go to that website. But yeah, thank you so much. That was really helpful information. Um, And well, first I'm going to launch the post question. And then I'm going to put the link to the survey in the chat. And I opened up the extension page and pasted that in there too. Um, and then there's osuipm.org. Does that go to the same place as this extension page?
Um, Probably not. When you say extension, you mean OSU extension or
OSU extension IPM is what I have here in the chat. But I'll put
that
your link too.
yeah, that might be what goes to the Oregon IPM Center, which is they're separate from what we do.
Oh,
But
okay.
that's like, going to Cornell IPM, although yeah, I was gonna say there's IPM centers and
Gotcha.
UC IPM and all that. But yeah, mine is the vanity URL is the osuipm.org.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So now if anyone has any questions, we've got time for a few.
Thank you so much for that, Tim. It was really informative. I'm the newly dubbed school coordinator for the Cornell IPM program, so this was very helpful.
Oh.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you is that you mentioned the evaluations that you've been doing. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share that, because I think it would be really helpful across the country. If we were using the same tool, we might be able to do comparisons of different methods.
When you say evaluations, do you mean like the evaluation of the training we do or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm writing that down. I can share it to you. I mean, I would like to, have a lot of sharing going on. I don't think it's, I don't know. I was gonna say I don't think it's that great, but I should be promoting myself. I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But I'll share it to you that I'll share it with you, and then you may find it useful, you may not. So yeah, I'll email it to you, and then if you think it's good, you can share it with others. And also, having said that, if anybody else is any of the others that are on, online, if they have a evaluation of training of school IPM training, it would be great to share with me and Joellen too. So I'm just gonna survey. So thanks. I'll do that survey. Or whoops.
And for what it's worth, we have not been able to budge our policies at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. And
So
I
no, that's fine. That would be absolutely wonderful. I wish that we had IPM coordinators that were mandated, but we do not. We have
hmm,
pesticide coordinators, and there's no required training. So our lives would be much easier if we had some of those mandates in our state.
hmm.
Thank you. Someone in the chat said you mentioned 100% trained within a 3-year period. Is that all public and private schools in Oregon?
No. No, but it is all public schools. Public K through 12 and all by shoot, I should remember this memorized now. I think it's 17 community colleges, might be 13. But all community college was a low number in all school districts in the state, yeah. But not all privates are hard to. I think we have more than half of the privates in our database, and then we've trained more than half, but it's really hard to track those. I forgot who it was. I think it was ODA at one time with ODE was able to get a database. But ODE, Oregon Department of Education, their database isn't all inclusive. So yeah, it's hard to know for sure who you're reaching there with them.
Hey, Tim, thanks for the presentation. I was just wondering who funds the trainings at schools. You said that you get several schools together and you have one experienced IPM coordinator train the other IPM coordinators, but who funds those trainings?
Um, Maybe I didn't explain that well. The trainings, so a training that happens, we do those 11 trainings, or maybe I did, but let me just in case, I'll just say it again. If I misunderstood, I'm just repeating myself a bit. But So I do the trainings. It's, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but it's me. I'm this OSU school IPM program is myself and quarter time support staff that puts all the packets together, the handouts together, the certificates of completion, and handles all the registration and such. And then I really get lots of help and very grateful for those two bullets, Oregon Department of Agriculture Pesticides Program and then the OSU Turf Management Program, the train. And also Washington County Health Department, the mosquito vector person there helps with some of the larger trainings. So anyway, in any given training, the host person, the IPM coordinator at the school district that I'm giving the training at, um, knows that school because it's part of his school district. Usually knows the school, and if he doesn't, he or she goes there ahead of time. For larger districts, they don't know it that well. And then the day before, we get set up, do a walkthrough, and then we do the training. And so in the training that I do, the IPM coordinator from that school district does the training in the afternoon or helps with the training. So I take one group on the indoor tour, so to speak, and then they take the other half. So the funding for that training and all of the logistics and all the handouts and the transportation the time it takes us to drive 6 hours to Eastern Oregon and then spend a night or two at a hotel, that is all from the program. So our program, I'm three-quarters of my salary is funded by the extension service, by legislature money that goes to extension service, and then it comes to my program, more or less. And that more or less meaning that's the general process. It's more, there's a little bit of in between steps and such, but that's the gist of where the funding comes from. And then and so that other quarter part of my salary, plus all the expenses, including the quarter time support staff, come from soft money. We have to charge for the training we do. I hope that answered your question. Probably that last 10 seconds answered your question, and the first minute or two weren't necessary, but
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
sure.